Starting with color number 1, we're going to make a magic circle. So to do that, we're going to take our yarn, using our 2 fingers and our thumb, we're going to hold it, wrap it around like this, create an X on the top of our 2 fingers. Put your hook under this first piece here and pull this piece through and turn. Now you're going to pull your working yarn through. So we're going to chain 2 more for our initial chain 3. This will always count as the first double crochet. We're going to yarn over, double crochet 2 times into the magic circle. So this is our first cluster. We're going to chain 1, double crochet 3 more times into the magic circle. So now we've got 2 clusters, chain 1, double crochet 3 more times, chain 1, and double crochet 3 more times for our final cluster. And then chain 1. So you should now have 4 clusters all together. So now we will pull this string, which will cinch the circle together, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3. So now we should have connected, and we've got a little square starting to form. So we're going to chain 3, which is how we'll start every row, our initial double crochet. In the spot directly beneath that chain 3, we're going to work 2 double crochets. So this time without chaining, yarn over and work 1 cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 1, and work another cluster of 3 double crochets into that exact same spot. So that creates our first corner. So you should have cluster, chain 1, cluster in that space. Now again, without chaining, we're going to go right into that next space and place another cluster of 3 double crochets. After you've finished that cluster, chain 1, and then another cluster in the same exact spot. So we've made another corner, again without chaining. In this next space, you'll place a cluster, chain 1, and another cluster in that space. So after working that third corner, we're back to the spot that we started on with this initial cluster. So we're going to place 3 double crochets into that first spot. We're going to chain 1 because we're in a corner, and then to connect the 2 clusters, we're going to slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 3. So we've got our first 2 rows done. We're going to do 4 rows of this first color, so we'll chain 3, go into that same spot underneath and place 2 double crochets. And now we have a side space. In the side spaces, we're going to place 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. We're back to a corner. So in each corner space, we're going to place 1 cluster of double crochets, separated by a chain 1, and then another cluster. Now we've come to another side space, so we're going to place 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. Back to a corner, so cluster, single crochet, cluster. So we just finished a corner. Now in the side space, we'll do 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. Now 1 cluster of 3 double crochets in the side space. Now we've reached the space that we started in, so we'll do 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. Chain 1 and slip stitch into that top of the initial chain 3. So I'm going to do 1 more row of this first color. So I'm going to chain 3, place 2 double crochets in that spot directly beneath the chain 3. And I'm just going to continue the pattern all the way around my square. So 1 cluster of 3 double crochets in every side space. In every corner we're doing 1 cluster, chain 1, 1 cluster, and then I'll meet you back at that first space we started in. So I just made it all the way around my square. I'm back at that initial space. So I'm going to place 3 double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch to the top of that initial chain 3. So I'm starting with 4 rows of brown, so I'm going to change colors. For this project, because it's just a giant square, I'm tying off between colors. If you're more comfortable slip stitching in the new color or attaching it a different way, you can definitely do that. It's not super important how you change it. I just feel like it's a little bit more secure with this large square to tie off, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to chain and tie off, leaving a long enough tail to be woven in. So I'm going to pull up and just pull that knot. So that will be the center of the squares that we're using for this shawl. So the next color I'm going to use is yellow. So now I'm going to do 2 rows of yellow. For this row, I'll show you how I attach and weave in the ends. And then for the rest of the tutorial, I'm just going to show you the color changes and how many rows rather than show you over and over how to attach the color. So to get started with the yellow, I'm going to make a slip knot. Insert my hook into this corner. I usually attach in the corner that is across from where we tied off so that it's a little bit easier to weave in the end as I go. Put the slip knot on my hook. Pull it through and chain 3 to make that initial double crochet. And I'm holding the tail against the back of the work so that I can weave in this end as I go. So I'm going to place 2 more double crochets to make that initial cluster of 3. So now I'm just going to continue the pattern, putting 1 cluster in each side space and 2 clusters separated by a chain 1 in each corner space. So as I go along this side, I'm going to hold the brown tail against the back of my work and weave that in as I go. So I'm going to do 2 rows of yellow, and then I'll meet you back when those are finished. So I'm tying off my second row of yellow. Now I'm going to attach the white and do 1 row of white. So after 1 row, I am going to tie off on my white and change colors. The next color I'm going to use is orange. So I'm going to attach and then do 2 rows of orange. Tying off after 2 rows of orange. I'm now going to attach white and do 2 more rows of white. Tying off after my second row of white. This is how we're looking so far. So now I'm going to attach brown again and do 2 more rows of brown. So I just finished my 2 rows of brown. I'm going to cut, leaving a tail, and tie off. Now I'm going to do 1 more row of white. Right, tying off after my 1 row of white. Now I'm going to attach again with the yellow, and I'm going to work 2 rows with the yellow. So I just finished my 2 rows of yellow. I'm going to tie off, and now I'm going to attach with orange and do 3 rows of orange. Alright, so I'm tying off after my 3 rows of orange. So far, this is what my first panel looks like. Now we're going to do one more color before we join them. I'm going to attach with brown and do 3 more rows of brown to finish off this first panel. Okay, so I just finished my last 2 rows of brown. So now I'm going to tie off. So this is my first panel. So now you'll make 2 more of these for a total of 3 panels, and then come back and I'll show you how to join them. Alright, so since these are so big, I'm going to try my best to show as much as I can. So you're going to take the first panel, this will be the back panel, and you're going to turn it so it's more diamond shaped. Then you'll take your next panel and align it this way so that these edges are matching up. And you'll do the same thing with your third panel. You'll align the edges here. So it'll create a V shape. So we've got the back and the 2 front side panels. So I'm going to zoom back in and I'll show you how we connect these. So to join our panels, I'm going to use a granny stitch. I just prefer the way that that looks, but if you would rather just whip stitch it or single crochet it together or any other joining method that you prefer, you can definitely do that. So to get started on granny stitching these together, I'm going to take my brown and make a slip knot. So I'm going to put the slip knot on my hook. So I'm on the right panel. I'm going to find that bottom corner. Going in through the top, I'm going to put my hook through. And then I'm going to move my yarn to be in the middle between the 2 panels. Then I'm going to find the bottom corner on the left panel, go in through the top, find that yarn, and now I'm going to slip stitch the 2 panels together. So I'm just going to pull that working yarn through all 3 loops on my hook. So this is how it should look so far. So now that I've got them attached, I'm going to place a cluster of 3 double crochets in this space here, that corner space that we just went into. So I'm just going to yarn over and place that cluster. Alright, so I've got 3 double crochets. Then I'm going to look at the other side, find the next space, which is right here, go in through the top, and slip stitch. Then find the next side on the opposite side, so the left side, and then going in through the top, I'm going to place a cluster of 3 double crochets. So now I'm going to go to the other side, find that next space, go in through the top and slip stitch, and then in the next space on the left side, I'm going to place a cluster of 3 double crochets. So that's the pattern I'm going to use going all the way up. So slip stitch, cluster, slip stitch, cluster, all the way up, and I will meet you at the top. So I'm placing my last cluster of double crochets, and now I'll place my last slip stitch. So we're joined all the way to the top. Now I'm going to tie off. So we have 2 panels attached so far. So again, keeping that back panel with the corner pointing up, more diamond shaped, we're going to attach the 3rd panel this way so that we're keeping this V shape at the top. So I'm going to use the same method that I used over here to attach this panel, and then I'll meet you back here. Alright, so we have our shawl fully put together. So you should have both sides attached. So this is how it looks all joined. So now I want to add one more row for a border. So I'm going to start down on the back panel at the bottom tip in the corner. So I'm going to flip the shawl to have the wrong side, or the back side, facing up. And now I'm in this bottom corner of the back panel. So I'm going to take the brown, make a slip knot, put my hook through that corner, put the slip knot on my hook, and pull through and chain 3. And now I'm going to place 2 more double crochets in that space. Including that first chain, we should have 3 double crochets. So now I'm just going to go on, placing a cluster of 3 double crochets in each space. So when you reach a corner, you'll just treat it the same way as you would treat a corner if we were still going around the square. So I'll do a cluster of 3 double crochet, chain 1, and then another cluster in that same space. And then you'll just keep on going down the side, placing a cluster in each space. So I just made it back to that first corner that we started in. So I'm going to place a cluster of 3 double crochets in that same space. Chain 1 and slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. So now I'm going to tie off. And that is where I'm going to end. So if you would like to make your shawl bigger, you can just keep going around and adding rows on the outside until it is the size that you would like it to be. You could also add tassels if you would like to add a little extra something to this, but I'm going to stop here. The last thing that I need to do is just weave in my ends, and then I am completely done.